Okay, everyone, welcome. This is The Last Defense. My name is Demond, and we have on today, we have Mr. Michael. How are you doing over there across the pond?
I'm doing good. I'm at a slightly different location. Instead of Vermont, I'm in upstate New York, Melrose, New York, which is just north of Albany. But as you can see from my background, it's not too different. More, subterranean forest. But
Nice.
yeah,
Well, yeah,
perfect weather.
brilliant. Yeah, we're over here back in the mid-20s, so everything seems to be a little bit better with the weather, on this side of the pond as well.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask you, what kind of things have you been looking at in the news today? What's going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, one headline really caught my attention. Spy.com. The headline is Russian soldiers last just 20 minutes on front lines, CIA chief confirms. This was posted on the 17th, so just a couple days ago. Again, this is on wokespy.com. Just from the headline, you can imagine my concern. It was one of those stories that I don't really enjoy reading, but I had to click on it because I'm like, how can that be? And the short of it, just to give like a brief preview, it's the drone warfare. Both sides are using it, but Russia in particular is really sending their soldiers right at this stuff, and they're getting horrible results, as you can tell from the headline. So that's something that I think we as a humanity around the world need to talk about. Warfare is not the traditional soldier versus soldier that we know from the movies or even from Vietnam or Iraq and Afghanistan. It's changed, and it's getting concerning. It's like robots versus humans now. So that's one story. That's probably the one I'll focus on today. But I got another one I'd like to talk about if possible. And how about yourself?
Yeah. It's like one of the things you mentioned about that is a lot of the fourth and fifth generation warfare that's being conducted around the world, especially with the use of drones, which they're a lot cheaper to make depending on which kinds they are. I think that's going to make it really, really tricky for a lot of people to conduct warfare over a long period of time because it's just so easy for them to manufacture them. That's what's helping the Ukrainian military. Now, I guess on this side of the pond, we have Prime Minister Andy Burnham, who has actually become the Prime Minister after serving as the Greater Manchester Mayor for, I think it was about 7 or 8 years, something around that.
He's kind of describes himself as a socialist, isn't that correct?
Well, he's a member of the Labour Party, and he is essentially he's seen as left of former Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, which he's had to resign due to a lot of his we don't even want to get started on what Keir Starmer's done, but I could spend an entire show based on all of the cock-ups that he's committed to over the last 2 years. But Andy Burnham is seen as more of like a kind of down-to-earth bloke from Manchester. Well, he's actually from Liverpool area, Merseyside area. And he then became the mayor of Greater Manchester around 2010, 2017, I would say, maybe. So yeah, there's a lot to be said about him. Would you like to go over some of the things that he's going to usher in as Prime Minister, some of the things he's pledged?
Well, one of the things I've been looking for in the articles about him and have not found the answer to is, does he still want to keep imprisoning people for social media posts? Have you found out anything about that?
I'm not sure if he's actually going to reverse those laws, but what I have seen is that he wants to roll back aspects of the digital ID scheme, which I don't think is going to be completely reversed, which is something that people are, scrutinizing heavily, especially as things go on. There was actually a very interesting thing that I mentioned that I found out today. Are you an iPhone user, by the way?
Yes, I have one. The newest one. 17 Pro.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's going to be the tricky bit, because I found out that Apple has forced people to adhere to the new digital ID scheme. So what they are doing, if you want an OS update, they force you now to unlock your phone by agreeing to the terms of the digital ID. So there was a YouTuber that had mentioned that recently, and now he's teaching people how to use Graphene OS, which I will be installing on my phone promptly.
So if I understand this correctly, simply by owning an iPhone, the newest iPhone, I'm going to be forced into some sort of digital ID unless I take an alternate route, which you just mentioned.
Well, it was specifically for Apple OS or like iOS, which is kind of like the operating system for the phones. What they want to do is to make people agree to the terms and conditions, upload their ID in order to use it in the UK. So to access the servers and the digital data that is put within the, within the borders of the United Kingdom.
Okay. So is the UK and Apple, are they in agreement on this, or is this something where Apple just has to swallow their pride and let it happen?
Well, the interesting thing about that is something that Apple has decided to do. And interestingly enough about that, what Apple has done isn't really abiding by the terms and conditions of the legality of digital ID. They're not really required to do digital ID checks for an upgrade or an installment on the phone.
So, but they have to do it if you're in the UK, it sounds like.
That's what it says there. I'll put the information about that in the description box for this podcast. But it should be, long story short, more people will be switching to unlocked and customized ROMs, which are kind of like the operating systems that you can download and use from like XDA developers and others to customize and to protect your phone by removing a lot of the Google bloat and a lot of the software patches that will be kind of putting in this new digital ID scheme in different parts of the world. I know Australia's got it, parts of the United States, I believe it was California has it, and there'll be others that will roll theirs out over the years.
So I'm trying to understand. So they want, by digital ID, does this mean if I want to post like a social media post on Facebook or Twitter, I have to have a certain level of credibility with the government and or the powers that be, as far as like I'm not a rabble rouser or a outlaw, so to speak?
Well, so the pretense about this comes from the Online Safety Act. This was launched in 2023. And from what I remember about it, it's it's a law that basically works under the guise to protect young children, when in fact, from a personal point of view, they have not done enough to protect children with the whole grooming gangs issue that has erupted across the country in 50 different cities and towns and all sorts. But what they're saying now is that, in order to protect children, there was one child that allegedly died from the from content she was exposed to online. And because of this, they want to do digital ID checks. They want to launch digital ID scheme, which loads all your data up into a database of people. And this will allow you to access certain information, track your social credit score, supposedly.
Credit score. Is that an Orwellian term that you're using for effect, or is that what they're actually saying?
Well, what it would eventually go to, and this is the main thing that people are concerned about, is that they could use it to use certain technologies like Palantir would launch to determine predictive behavior, to know what people are buying at any specific time and what kind of things or data they've accessed online. So there's a lot of ways that they could tailor this, bespoke information using metadata and keywords that they could actually log into the database. This is the long-term threat that such a digital ID could face. And another one, now recently there were two teenage boys, I think they were around 17 or 18, when they hacked the Transport for London database and system. And these two boys, who basically are just kind of like neckbeards, they were sat on the couch, the whole day. They went into the system, hacked it, stole millions of people's information, and now they're facing about 5.5 years each for whatever they've done. So that makes digital ID very, very unsafe. If the TfL can get hacked, imagine what happens if the government is hacked by a state actor or a non-state actor.
And just the notion, I'm just speaking as like a layperson here, but like just the notion of needing an ID to do anything on the internet speaks of like permission. Like, you want to be a social influencer, if you want to share what your cat ate for breakfast this morning, or if you want to have any influence in any way, shape, or form in the public discourse on the internet, you have to be like, quote unquote, approved by the powers that be, or you're not, able to have your voice, hence your First Amendment or Magna Carta, whatever you want to call it. Sounds concerning to me, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, yes, I mean, there's been many, many concerns about the entire issue. And one of those concerns is the new YouTube policy that has been launched recently that has warned people about the dangers, well, not the dangers per se, but the upcoming plans of the UK government to de-rank certain creators, and additionally prop up creators such as the BBC, ITV, Sky News, Channel 5. So all the mainstream media, they're going to push them forward in the algorithms, and they're going to pull back independent content creators.
Now, I would think, and I'm no lawyer, but I've been a journalist for a good while and covered stories about censorship many times. My instinctive thought is, how is this legal? Like, how is this? In America, we would say constitutional. Over in England, you would say what? This doesn't fit with the Magna Carta, I guess, or how are they able to get away with this in a court? This is what I'm saying.
I mean, they would even say like constitutional here. I mean, the thing is, there's no written constitution in the UK. There's a series and an amalgamation of laws, decrees, and other things that constitute the rights of citizens in the UK. So the Magna Carta was back in the 1200s. That was
right. That's like the original, right? That's pretty
well. It's more like a contract between landowners and kings and so on. So people who owned land, or who they were given more rights. There's a ton of other different things within it, but loosely speaking about it, the Magna Carta was kind of like the first constitution between the king and the subjects of the ruled, the governed.
I just I have trouble understanding how this works. Now, I was reading an article today. I want to get back to the Prime Minister here, Andy Burnham. Tell me if this is true or not. They had to have a ceremony where he would kiss the ring or the hand of the king in order to get to be approved into power. Is that just ceremonial, or is that something that is not quite right in terms of, I mean, I guess the short of it is, are kings and queens in England still really a thing, or is it just ceremonial and like for show? And did this guy have to like kiss a ring just to become prime minister? You know what I'm talking about?
Loosely put, so the United Kingdom is a constitutional monarchy, and what has essentially been developed over the years. In order to understand why this is the case, you have to go back to the days of Oliver Cromwell. Have you ever heard of this man before?
Oh yeah, his name rings a bell for sure. Yeah.
So it was roughly around roughly around the 1600s. There was a big war called the Great Civil War, and there was a civil war between two factions of the UK society. It was the parliamentarians, which were the Roundheads, and then you had the Cavaliers, which were the Royalists. And these two waged war across the country after Cromwell decided he was going to push down and depose, I believe it was King Charles I. Now, a lot of those battles happened in the Midlands and other parts of the UK, London as well, if I'm not mistaken. But what eventually happened, the Roundheads caught Charles I and they executed him in public. So
What?
And then after that happened, they formed something called a rump parliament, if I'm not mistaken, and this constituted the first parliamentary system in the UK. After that, after Cromwell passed, they then reinstated the king. At the time, that was the heir apparent, which was Charles II. And he was the one that took power after that. And so there was a deal struck between the two powers to create a constitutional monarchy to balance the two powers out. Now, the king is still the sovereign of the United Kingdom, and he's additionally the sovereign of the Commonwealth. So he's the one in charge of all of those 50 so odd countries that are part of that system.
Right.
Now,
is he elected though? I mean, king, when I think of king, I don't think of elected. I think of like, it's just there by divine right or whatever you call it.
Well, such is the case. I mean, it's a hereditary system, or it's a system appointed based on, the different alliances, the marriages that have taken place, so on. So that there are different families within the whole system. There were the Mountbattens, which was Prince Philip II, who was Queen Elizabeth's husband, and he's the Duke of Edinburgh. He passed not too long ago. Yeah. And then Queen Elizabeth II, she was the Windsor family. So, she was a part of like she was part of, I believe it was part of the English lineage of monarchs, because there was an Elizabeth I, which was during the Tudor period. And then after that, you have King Charles III. So he's the third Charles to rule across.
That's the one who Andy Burnham had to like kiss his hand, right?
Essentially, I don't know if I've seen them kiss the hand of the sovereign at that time, but do you know exactly where you saw that in?
I don't have the article in front of me, unfortunately, but I was reading about this earlier today, and I remember that kind of stood out to me as like, whoa, they really are still a monarchy. And over in England, this is probably like everyday life, but as an American over here, I'm like, it's still weird to me it's 2026 and we're talking about kings and queens. It's like, it feels out of place. And again, we're across the pond, and it's like, we haven't had a king in over 200 years. So we're kind of, sometimes when I hear about it, even though over there it's like second nature, I guess, but it just feels weird.
Oh yeah, I mean, the king at the time of the formation of the United States, well, the colonial period, essentially, before the Revolutionary War, that was George III. And his queen consort was Charlotte Mecklenburg von Strelitz. So she was who you hear like Charlottesville, Charlotte, North Carolina, and other Charlotte derivative cities and towns. That's where that comes from. Mecklenburg County was actually a Mecklenburg state in Germany. So there's a Mecklenburg in Germany, and so that's loosely where she comes from. Her lineage comes from. She was German, and so she was imported over to kind of carry on the lineage. She was the queen consort at the time. That said, yes, monarchies are still a very big thing. And your neighbor Canada is actually ruled by the sovereign from the United Kingdom. They're part of the Commonwealth. And they were the only country to burn down Washington, D.C. with Admiral Cockburn. So, interestingly enough, that was during the War of 1812.
Yes, I don't remember it, but I remember learning about it.
Yeah,
that's an
the
interesting
history is
story.
quite fascinating on that. But yeah, I could go on a large travel on that.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to send us on a big divergent thing in the history, although it is very interesting, so I don't necessarily regret it. But I think what everybody really wants to know for England today is Andy Burnham going to change anything for the better, or is it going to be more business as usual? And I know that's a broad question,
Let's
but
suspect it.
I think that's what everybody knows. He's a
Well,
what?
it's suspected that he will probably be more of the same. What I can do is share some of the things that he's already launched, some of the things that are taking place with his prime minister. So, pull this up.
Yeah, what does he want to do? I see here Costa Rivet. I have a list ahead of me too.
Okay. So here's some of his main policy pledges. So this is coming from The Independent. This has been this is a rolling coverage of some of the information coming out for his campaign and some of the promises that he's made here. So some of the things that he's going to tackle is the cost of living crisis, which, of course, that will be one of the most difficult things. It's going to be a very piecemeal type thing. One of the things he wanted to do is to remove the ceiling for the income cap that's tax. So I think they're going to raise from 12,500 to a little bit higher, so that way that it doesn't affect pensioners nearly as much who are earning lower incomes for each year. Additionally, they said he was going to scrap the digital ID scheme. Sorry, there's boobs on the side.
All right, entertainment. Keep people focused on the video.
Good old fashioned cookies, I swear. Before becoming prime minister, Mr. Burnham also revealed he was scrapping the government's digital ID scheme. That's what a good thing. Well, I mean, it's not really what people say. I'll get to that really soon. He said that he wants to divert some of the funds to go instead where it's needed the most, such as helping with the cost of living. He wants to reduce energy bills. He also wants to remove some of the policy levies from those bills. This would cost taxpayers around $3.2 billion a year, save every household about $130 a year. And this is according to the think tank Nesta. A few other things that he wanted to do. He wants to end rough sleeping around the country. And this is going to be a bit of a contentious issue because anyone who's lived in Manchester, I mean, I lived in Manchester for about 6 months, and there are homeless people everywhere. So him being the mayor of Manchester and then saying he wants to end rough sleeping around the country, that is a very ambitious thing for him to want to do, considering that he wasn't able to accomplish
rough sleeping. What does that mean? Rough sleeping. Am I saying
okay? Rough sleeping in the UK is basically being homeless.
Oh, okay, I see. That's what I thought it meant, but I just wanted to clarify. Okay.
Yeah, and it specifically relates to the homelessness that comes about because someone is sleeping on the streets.
Right.
So yeah. So he says he wants to increase the number of council houses, which ironically, a lot of those are going to migrants, which that'll be a conversation for another day. And I can explain that in more detail. So that whole situation, he's going to have to balance that with who's actually in need of it, who's a native British citizen rather than a person who is a migrant to the country and their first and second generations. We also talk about reviving the high streets, which have been decimated due to a lot of the taxes that the outgoing Chancellor of the Exchequer's Rachel Reeves did during her time. She's the one that basically taxed all the pubs, all the high street shops to death and made it very difficult. But she did this by raising the national insurance rates, and that did some extensive damage to the economy.
Taxing the pubs, my goodness.
Yeah, we need the pubs. They've been there for centuries, I swear.
Yeah. Huh.
And other things I've looked at, devolution. So this is one of the biggest contentious points about Andy Burnham, is that he wants to pull power away from Westminster and spread it across the country. So he wants to pull it into like Greater Manchester and move around some of the institutions to go to other parts of the country. So I don't know how well that's going to go, because what it's going to do is basically he will give more power to mayors as well. So the mayor of mayor of Greater Manchester, Greater West Midlands Combined Authority, people like that, mayor of London, is going to give them more power, which is actually, it could work to the detriment of, people around the entire country, because they may not have the access to resources. And so it could also balkanize the countryside. That could be very, very difficult issue to deal with.
I don't mean to hit the rear or go in reverse a little bit, but you had mentioned you wanted to lower energy prices. Does that mean, now when I think of energy prices, I think of all the energy. So I'm coming from Vermont, so this is the way I think about it. In Vermont, they try to mandate this or that new energy technology, cost be damned, meaning it might cost more, but they mandate it anyway, regardless of whether you think it's going to change the environment or not, carbon output or not. They mandate wind turbines, they mandate solar panels, things that frankly in the free market they don't compete very well, because I don't know, they're newer technologies, they have a higher cost per kilowatt, whatever the case be, they simply cost more. Is that going on in the UK, and is that something that his energy policy might tackle?
Well, very interesting about that. One thing that he has potentially promised, and I don't quote me on this yet because it hasn't actually officially come out, but I believe he's in talks to open up the North Sea pipelines so that he can drill for more oil and gas, which would be advantageous to the UK, considering what's taking place in the Strait of Hormuz at the moment. A lot of what's going on there can jeopardize pipelines, I would say, by the end of July, early August, and that's for the entire global economy. So it's going to be important that people have channels of extra oil and gas to accommodate the winter months, especially because we have some of the highest utility prices in the entire world, especially when it comes to heating and electricity.
Okay, well, that sounds good. I mean, more affordable energy is good for the economy and living and everything. That's the baseline of the economy.
Yeah, it can help, definitely. I hope it does. One of the other things I was looking at, he wants to nationalize some of those utility services and some of the railways and other things across the country, which I actually support. I think that should be state-owned. However, it should be managed efficiently, and if they can't do that, they shouldn't touch those. Now, from my personal perspective in the UK, I wasn't here during the Thatcher period when they nationalized when they privatized the railways, but they are extremely inefficient, some of the highest cost in the entire European economic area, and least efficient. So any kind of nationalization which can improve those parameters, I think, would be great. So we'll see about it.
Yep, and the U.S. does that too, I would point out. Amtrak, I believe, is at least partially fed or state-owned. I believe it was a similar story. They started as a private, and maybe the economics weren't working out. I don't know the whole history of it, but the end result was they are now at least partially state-run. And I don't know if a lot of people realize that, because everybody thinks, well, America is just a capitalist society. Well, we're kind of like a capitalist quasi, state ownership here in their society, which, there's reasons for having it either way, and maybe a mix is the right answer.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't aware about Amtrak being partially state-owned, but with a lot of heavy industries, they tend to be. I mean, I know we know from our time in Korea and additionally other places around the world, where we noted that they did have large state-owned enterprises, and those helped out the economy, the state economies as well. It gave greater oversight in such a complex skill or a complex market that allowed them to kind of govern how those industries were going to be carried out. So that helped out quite a bit. So there's a lot to look into that. It's going to be about the execution of it rather than simply just the fact that they want to nationalize it. Because I do remember that Boris Johnson, he nationalized one of the public railway systems, and it was just one line of it, and no one's really heard much about it ever since then.
I don't mean to, well, I guess I do mean to shift gears a little bit. I'd mentioned at the beginning of our broadcast that I was looking at a story about the Russian-Ukraine war. I know the hot spot in the world is the Strait of Hormuz and Iran and the US, but again, the headline that really brought to my attention the Russian-Ukraine conflict was the drone warfare. And maybe that definitely applies to Iran too, and because I know that both sides are probably using drones down there. But the thing that really caught my attention was how many. Well, first of all, Russia, I don't know if it's like a thing that goes all the way back to World War II. But they just seem to throw human bodies at every conflict in huge numbers, and they don't get great results. For people who are up on their history, I believe Russia had far and away the highest casualties in World War II. And I think it's because they have this tactic where they just kind of they have a large population by the nature of simply being a huge country with a lot of people. So they do that. They just throw wave after wave of soldiers. And they're doing that kind of, it's creating, I think, a human tragedy. They're throwing so many Russian soldiers into the Ukraine conflict. And again, the headline that I'm looking at here, Russian soldiers last just 20 minutes on the front lines. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they die, although for many of them it does. It can also be injury and taken off the battlefield. The numbers in this article include nearly 500,000 Russians have been killed in this conflict. 500,000 people. I think that number is huge because it is huge, and it's officially like 450,000. And they think a lot of it's because of this drone warfare. They're just getting massacred, not by other soldiers with guns, but by drones. What are your initial thoughts on that, or what does this mean for the future of warfare? Oh,
sorry about that. I forgot to unmute. You're on mute. The curse of 2020 returns. Oh, God. Sorry about that. So if I'm not mistaken, this was done by the article Defense News. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay, so you have the actual author on that article. All right, great. So I think this is not great. I mean, that's pretty spooky. I think of it's bad enough that we have machine guns and traditional warfare, so to speak, but now it's gone to a whole nother level. I think of the Terminator, those movies we used to watch as a kid, Skynet and robots fighting humans. It feels like we're pretty much there. And in some ways it's more terrifying than the movies even got to, because at least in the Terminator, they weren't flying around most of the robots. They were these humanoid soldiers on the ground, which were terrifying in their own right. But this is almost worse. They just fly around and shoot people. That sounds like a nightmare.
So, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So one of the things I wanted to point out about this, there's some things I wanted to look at. So firstly, the primary source of this is Central Intelligence Agency Director John Ratcliffe. So it's a single source, and he is of course a senior intelligence official. However, what they're looking at, they're also talking about assessments that are linked to European and Ukrainian officials. So one thing I would say about that is when you have these articles that come out and they say it's a source. It usually is to move the needle in certain, defense investments or other things like that. Because one of the things that I've heard conversely, and this is coming from a lot of shows like, what's the guy's name? Daniel Haifong, who speaks to a lot of different people, especially speaks to Alexander Mercouris, and he speaks to there's the guy, the former CIA analyst. I can't remember his name. I was just watching him today. Sorry about that. It'll come back.
You're saying like they want to move the policy so that we build more drones. I kind of got that from reading it too.
Yeah. So as you have spoken about this, I'll dovetail into something similar to it. But what we'll talk about now is we look at this. He said this at the Defense and Innovation Summit in Pennsylvania. So he said the average life expectancy of a Russian recruit right now arriving on the battlefield in Ukraine is estimated to be between 20 and 30 minutes. That's because AI-powered drones have gotten to be such specialized, low-cost killing machines, which is true. However, he did mention this at the Defense and Innovation Summit in Pennsylvania. So what would you say about that specific comment?
So I see what you're saying. So he's speaking to an audience where they're already talking about technology and war technology. And he, being a person of high influence in U.S. military policy, probably wants to say anything that he can to move the needle, so to speak, or get the U.S. to build more of its own AI-powered drone fleet or something of that nature. And I think that makes sense. It's a good way to critically look at that article.
Yeah, I would definitely caution when it comes at specific junctions. And I didn't read the article before then, just for the audience to know. But my spidey sense went off. I was like, he has to either be speaking as an official statement to propagate a specific viewpoint, or he's speaking at a defense conference. And that was where it was when we scrolled down. So I would take those with a grain of salt. What we oftentimes find is that this happens at critical junctions in which there needs to be more investment into defense technologies. Because without those things, we know that, number one, Ukraine needs a low-cost alternative to weapons. Because I can show in an article here that the United States is critically low on its global stockpiles of munitions. Have you heard anything about that in the news?
Yes, I have. I've heard about that for both the Ukraine and Iran conflict. That's become a thing because we're basically supplying both wars, is the way I understand it. But what I meant to say was that I have definitely read a lot today about weapons and ammunition running out on the western side of the conflict.
Yeah, there's an article I will share with you briefly, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see. So the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because today, it came out about 12 hours ago, and it talks a lot about the current issue that the the government is facing, or the U.S. government is facing, the Defense Department, the Department of War, as they call it nowadays. So let's have a look at this quickly. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. It's loading up. Right. I see it now.
So I had to dig a little bit deeper for this one because it was behind a paywall on Telegraph. But of course, thank you, Yahoo News. They published it in its entirety. So another American official has told the Telegraph directly that the U.S. does not have enough missiles to return to an all-out war with Iran. So this is bad news for Donald Trump's war with Iran, and as well as the Houthis in Yemen. He said also that this U.S. official, I think he's anonymous at the moment, he or she, we do not have enough to safely sustain operations, and I don't think the White House is aware of that. So this one told the Washington Post, I believe, and then this was reported in the Telegraph, I suppose.
Yeah.
But what's going on right now is that what people don't understand about Iran is that they have studied war with the United States and other powers for 35 years since the Iranian Revolution.
They have experience. They're veterans. They fought with Iraq while backed by the U.S. So they know a thing or two about how to fight a war.
Yep. And the thing was, I'm not sure who won that war. I do believe it was Iran. Don't quote me on that. And please do your due diligence, whoever's listening to this. But one thing that we're noticing now is that Iran has not even gone through about 40% of its entire stockpiles. Meanwhile, the United States has just a few THAADs. It has about 20 THAAD missiles that it can use.
Oh.
And it has less than 600 of its medium range intercept, missiles, and very, very low on interceptors, which is very bad for Israel and a lot of the Gulf Arab allies.
Right. So, kind of vulnerable. It leaves us vulnerable, and or our allies vulnerable. By going on the offense, we basically spend our arsenal.
Yeah, that's very true. But see, CENTCOM isn't publishing the data of, number one, the fatalities they've incurred over last night's strikes and the strikes before then. So every time Trump hits hard, says he wants to hit hard, what happens is they run and deplete more of their stockpiles. And here's the funny thing about it. You also have an issue with U.S. munitions. They need rare earth minerals, especially the more advanced ones, because they use onboard computing to guide themselves to their targets. If you don't have rare earth minerals, you can't reproduce any more weapons. You can't do it for Ukraine, you can't do it for your Gulf allies, and you can't do it for your own war. So this is the triple threat that the United States is now facing in all of these issues.
Maybe that's a good thing in a way. I mean, as somebody who would like to see these wars come to an end, maybe it's time to run out. I know that's a twisted way to look at it.
Well, see, here's the issue. Israel doesn't have the munitions. They depend heavily on the $3.5 billion each year for defense. They have their own defense contractors, but now you have issues like the Strait of Hormuz is closed again. Now they're talking about closing the Bab al-Mandab Strait, which goes into the Red Sea. The Yemeni Houthis are going to help with that. Yeah. And furthermore, there was another strait. I do believe it was the what's the one in Egypt? The Suez Canal. So if all three of those are closed, you can absolutely shut down the entire global economy, because that will then increase the loss of trade from 20% of all global oil trade to roughly about 40 to 50. So that's possibly half of all global trade. What would you do in a situation? And additionally, China is not giving United States any of the rare earths because it owns the monopoly on the market to make their missiles.
My first thought is, and this is not a topic I prepared for this particular show, so forgive me if I'm speaking broadly, but I've always been a big believer that the U.S. and the Western world as a whole has suppressed our true technological capabilities in terms of energy efficiency and all those such resources. The most common example that people know, and maybe we'll stick to the one that people are familiar with, Nikola Tesla. Didn't he have a lot of technologies that sound like sci-fi today, even though he died, like over 60 years ago or something like that? I think some of those technologies that they sort of shut away into a back closet somewhere and put like a padlock on it, they're going to have to take the padlock off and say, maybe we do need these technologies to survive. If we have to deal with, like you just mentioned, 40, it sounds like we could really see a serious reduction in conventional energy in terms of oil, natural gas, etc., if all these straits and canals keep getting closed. And if the U.S. truly is suppressing technologies in the interest of what I've learned to call artificial scarcity. 1984 by George Orwell talked a lot about this. The powers that be don't want the masses to have cheap energy. It doesn't work in their financial interest. But if we're really getting choked by these wars, maybe this will force them to unleash some of that suppressed technology. I know that's a lot for commentary, but and that's probably enough for a whole other show in terms of subject matter. But
there's a lot of rabbit holes that we could go down. There's a couple that I can think of off the top of my head. Number one of the things that they talk about is the fact that if the US loses its hegemony in the Middle East, what that's going to do is actually completely uproot the global order for the petrodollar, which means that you remember back in 1971, the United States did a deal with Saudi monarch at the time. And what he said that he wanted to do is you have to buy global oil trade in dollars. And additionally, we'll provide you with weapons and munitions to secure your territories.
Yeah.
However, with those capabilities gone, see, what's happening is that the marketing side of it's completely dead now. And what the United States is faced with is the reality that it cannot defend its allies. As we've seen, desalination plants have been hit, infrastructure has been hit, munitions have gone low. There are no more interceptors from any of these countries. It takes a minimum of 3 years to manufacture interceptors because of the strict productivity pipelines because of that. And additionally, there are so many other things with Iran that a lot of these Gulf allies were not prepared for because they've never gone to war with them. After the Iran-Iraq war, what that's done is now Iran is so prepared for a war of attrition that many of these surrounding countries like Bahrain and UAE and Kuwait and Saudi Arabia to a lesser extent and Israel, they are not prepared. Israel has stopped attacking Iran. Why? Why do you think so?
Oh, well, it sounds like they're running out of resources to do so.
Yep. It's essentially what's happened is that they've run out of interceptors. They have run out of weapons. They've run out of funding. They've used everything else. By the way, the CIA analyst is Larry Johnson. I need to remember his name. So two people who have been really instrumental for Daniel Hapong's podcast is Larry C. Johnson and then Mohammed Marandi. Those two have been critical for understanding what's going on in Iran at this particular moment in time. But one thing we can say is that without those defense capabilities, they're all getting just blasted by a lot of these missiles. One of the things that Larry Johnson mentioned today, or maybe it was a podcast yesterday, is that Iran used to use GPS to hit a lot of its targets. Well, then the United States could just take control of the coordinates and then it would make their missiles less accurate. They then switched over to Beidou, which is the system used in China, and they're striking everything, which is why they're so deadly now.
You know what this makes me think of? I don't know if you ever played the computer game, the popular PC game, Civilization. It's been around for like 20 odd years. I think
I've heard of it, but I mean, one of my
yeah, it's a strategy game. It's a computer strategy game where you basically build a civilization, you fight wars, you control resources, you control taxes, the whole bit. Hence, they call it Civilization. One thing I know that video games in reality are not quite the same, but I have played a lot of it. And there's one thing I learned is once you're in a war and or under the perceived threat of a war, you tend to take preparation and or military technologies and or all these things that we're discussing, tactics, strategy, way more seriously. If you're kind of like having a peaceful game where nobody's agitated around you, you might have pikemen defending your cities while your neighbors are maybe quietly building musket men or tanks. Obviously, a pikeman and a swordman's not going to do very well against a tank or a gun, you know. But it sounds like my point in bringing up this analogy is it sounds like Iran has been in prep mode for a long time. They've got their missiles and bunkers underneath mountains. They've learned a lot from their conflict with Iraq, it sounds like. They learned a lot of the what to do, what not to do in modern warfare. And I don't know if it's a short-sightedness on Trump or bad advice that he's getting, probably a combination of both. But clearly they were ready for this war, and it's working out in their favor.
So one of the things I can just mention before we wrap things up today is I do want to be mindful of your time as well.
No, I'm okay. But yeah, if we need to go a little extra, it's okay.
Okay, yeah. In that case, one of the things we found out is like after the assassination of Ayatollah Khomeini, what has happened now is that many of the leadership in Iran have called for revenge, especially Mojtaba Khomeini, his son, who has taken the role of supreme leader.
Sure.
And what this essentially means is that they're going to escalate the war against the United States and its Gulf allies. So they're making sure that no one is safe, and that this doesn't happen again. And the reason for this is because twice the Iranians have negotiated on terms of peace with the United States and with Israel and other, surrounding allies of the United States. And every single time, the US and Israel has struck out against them when they were not in a time of war. So that happened on February 28th most recently. And then it happened back in June last year when they started the first, I think it was a 12-day war, 12 or 14-day war.
Would it be accurate to say that, and I know this is a whole other angle, but may as well say it, is Israel dragging us or keeping us in this war when the U.S. is trying to get out of it?
Well, interestingly enough, they did initially. So Israel was the first to launch the strikes on February 28th, and then the United States jumped in on that. I remember the day very clearly. But one thing we've noticed now is Israel's taken a back seat, and what they're doing now is focusing on Hezbollah and Gaza. So they're doing more settlements in the West Bank and in they're destroying more territory in the Gaza Strip, so much to the point now where Hamas has dissolved its political wing in the Gaza Strip. And I'm not sure where they're going to go next, but it was part of the peace deal that they did with the United States and Israel. However, Hezbollah in southern Lebanon has been absolutely being a thorn in the side of Israel for many, many months and many years, even say. And what now Israel is trying to focus a lot of its firepower on them. However, they're not going to go away. And furthermore, one of the preconditions to peace in the Memorandum of Understanding, which is now dead, is Iran demanded that Israel stop attacking Lebanon and
I remember that.
So it's not gonna die out anytime soon, and I think that it's only going to increase. And now you got the Yemeni Houthis who have joined the war against Saudi Arabia. It's going to get even harder.
My initial reaction to all of this is I feel like I know this is like the most obvious statement in the world, but sometimes it just needs to be said. Isn't it in the best interest in everybody to smoke a darn peace pipe and get along? I mean, for everybody, literally, like if you think of all the resources that are being wasted from both sides, probably in terms of building all these weapons, all the GDP that goes to warfare, and for what and for who? I mean, does the average Israeli citizen and the average Iranian citizen or American citizen really care about these conflicts? Or is it military contractors who are making billions of dollars on this stuff that are the ones who are really behind it? And I know that's another broad question, but I feel like that's one that we need to think about, because I've naively said over the years, I'm like, I don't imagine another great war in our generation or that we'll see. But now it feels like it's pretty darn close to that. Or a robot.
Well, here's the problem with that. I can deconstruct that three ways. Number one, the US cannot launch a great war with anyone because they don't have the munitions now. So
right.
it's not gonna work. War with what?
Right. Reality sinking in. Yep.
So number two, you have the issue of ideology being behind a lot of the war on Israel's side, because they want to create a greater Israel, which is why they're clearing out they've actually they've put in Syria, they've incurred across the border, and they have decided to occupy parts of Syria. They've occupied parts of southern Lebanon, and so they're creating their greater Israel project as best as they can at this moment. It's not going to go well, because I guess on my end, just to wrap things up, I appreciate everyone's time. This has once again been the last defense. We've been just speaking about some of the topics taking place for today, and we'll try to get this out as soon as possible. Do apologize for some of the issues, some of the technical difficulties, but we are working through those to kind of test certain platforms to make sure we've got the right one for the podcast. And my name's DC. We've been having Michael on here. He's the co-host of the show. So we just sit, we chat, and we just shoot the breeze about whatever topics are taking place in the world and go from there. So it's a pleasure having you all here. Thank you so much for the audience that's decided to join in. And as we always say, speak your mind, defend the truth, and keep your sanity. That's our maxim for this podcast. So it's a pleasure having you on again, Mike. It's good to chat with you.
Yep. Thank you. Okay.